Welcome to The Awakening, Black Women United. I am your host, Cheri Dani. Subscribe, like, share, comment, and hit the notification bell so you know every time I upload a new video. Welcome to Black Girl Tragic Tuesday. Scene 2, Femicide Statistics. Deadly violence against Black women persists in the U.S. Stephanie Gadlin, November 30, 2024. The Crusader News Group published a new report by the United Nations that reveals that femicide, the most extreme form of violence against women and girls, is still pervasive globally. Black women in the U.S. are 3 times more likely than white women to be killed by a domestic partner or family member. Released by UN Women and the UN Office of Drug Control, Femicides in 2023, Global Estimates of Intimate Partner Family Member. Femicides noted that 85,000 women and girls were killed intentionally, with 60% of these homicides, 51,100, committed by an intimate partner or family member, accounting for 60% of all female homicides. In too many cases, victims of femicide had previously reported violence and their killings could have been prevented. With that said, the UN says 140 women and girls are killed every day by someone they know, equating to 1 every 10 minutes. Violence against women and girls is not inevitable. It is preventable. We need robust legislation, improved data collection, greater government accountability, a zero-tolerance culture, and increased funding for women's rights organizations and institutional bodies. As we approach the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action in 2025, it is time for world leaders to unite and act with urgency, recommit, and channel the resources needed to end this crisis once and for all, said Sima Bahous, UN Women Executive Director, in a statement. UN Women, formerly known as the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, is based in New York and was established in July 2010 to accelerate progress in meeting the needs of women and girls worldwide. In addition to eliminating violence against women, the agency ensures women's rights are protected and promoted globally by promoting access to education, employment, political participation and leadership, and economic viability. The UN report comes at a chilling time in Chicago where advocates, journalists, public officials, and grieving relatives have decried the disappearance, unsolved deaths, attacks, and domestic homicides against African American women and girls. The resounding cry seems to be that unlike cases involving other races, when Black women go missing or are killed, the public response is either lackadaisical, slow, or non-existent. The same can be said for their children. Black children make up about 33% of all missing child cases. The FBI noted there were 375,304 reported entries for missing children in 2023, meaning 123,850 were African American. Despite the shocking number and the pleas from their families, research published in Communication Research Reports found that in 2015, missing Black children only comprised 7% of media references. The Invisible Institute and City Bureau released an analysis of police data that showed that of the nearly 340,000 missing persons cases in Chicago between 2000 and 2021, Black children made up 57% of all incidents. Black girls between the ages of 10 and 20 made up nearly 1/3 of all missing person cases in the city, despite comprising only 2% of the city population as of 2020. An additional analysis of more than 20 years of crime data by local CBS journalist Dorothy Tucker last fall revealed in 2022 that nearly 30% of all crime victims were Black women, even though they make up just 16% of the city's entire population. African American women in Chicago also represented 24% of property theft victims, 38% of battery victims, and 40% of rape victims. Tucker's report came 2 years after noted journalist and Roosevelt University professor John W. Fountain released The Unforgotten, The Untold Stories of Murdered Chicago Women, chronicling hundreds of cases of missing and/or murdered Black women and girls that had gone unsolved and unnoticed by mainstream media. His groundbreaking investigative series sparked conversations across the country and inspired other local reporters to pick up the banner of missing and murdered Black women and build off of Fountain's work. The facts don't lie. Black women are murdered at twice the rate of women of other races in the United States, Fountain wrote in 2021. Indeed, according to a Centers for Disease Control and Prevention analysis of female homicide statistics between 2003 and 2014, Black and Indigenous women were killed as a result of homicide at rates more than double women of other races. That speaks nothing of the vast, well-documented disparity in the media's coverage of murdered Black women versus the coverage of murdered white women, he said. Recently, the cases of 2 local women who were killed or brutally attacked despite seeking orders of protection have renewed the call for stronger protections for women. On November 19th, Lacramioara Beldie, who is white, was fatally stabbed by her estranged husband, Constantine Beldie, in the Portage Park neighborhood of Chicago. Despite her repeated attempts to obtain protection, including an emergency order of protection in January and another in October, the judge, Thomas Nowinski, denied the request to hold Constantine in custody. Instead, he was released on electronic monitoring. Beldie's murder has sparked significant outrage and calls for Nowinski to be reassigned, as advocates argue that electronic monitoring is insufficient in domestic violence cases. On March 13th of this year, 11-year-old Jayden was fatally stabbed while trying to protect his pregnant mother from an attack by her ex-boyfriend, Crosetti Brand, who had been released on parole just a day before the incident. The child's mother, Laterria Smith, an African American, was 8 months pregnant and was also stabbed multiple times but survived the attack. The woman had not been notified that Brand had been released from state custody, despite being denied an order of protection by Nowinski, despite the man having a history of repeatedly violating previous protection before his incarceration for theft. In the aftermath, Leanne Miller, a member of the Illinois Prisoner Review Board, resigned after public pressure. The judge remained seated. As tragic and heartbreaking as those 2 cases are, Black women in the United States have always faced disproportionate rates of domestic violence. More than 40% of African American women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime, compared to 31.5% of all women. Additionally, Black women are 2.5 times more likely to be murdered by men than white women, with 92% of these killings committed by a current or former intimate partner, according to the City of Chicago's own findings. In other words, the vast majority of African American female murder victims knew their killers and were either actively or formerly in intimate or familial relationships with them. Why are so many women between the ages of 15 and 45 being killed by people they loved, married, dated, had children with, or strong family ties? The answers may lie in a complex understanding of effects of white supremacy, internalized helplessness and self-hatred, misogyny, childhood trauma, poverty, the proliferation of negative and anti-Black female stereotypes, among other social ills. According to the University of Illinois Chicago's Research Center, which focuses on women's concerns, issues such as racism, patriarchy, and other systems of oppression have created dynamics that render Black women vulnerable to domestic violence at alarming rates while remaining unprotected. Economic independence plays a significant role in how women respond to domestic violence. Given that Black women are disproportionately working in low-paying jobs and have less access to economic self-reliance, their opportunities to leave abusive relationships and home environments are diminished, the center noted. Black women's access to protection has also been jeopardized by police violence against their communities. Often, Black women feel unsafe to seek state protection because they fear the consequences of police interventions for themselves, such as being abused by the police, being arrested, or even killed, or for their abusers. In Chicago, the homicide rate remains alarmingly high, particularly for Black residents. In 2023, the homicide rate for Black residents was 20 times higher than for white residents. The city saw 511 homicides in 2024, with young Black women being among the victims. In 2020, for example, Chicago experienced 101 domestic-related homicides, and most of those victims were Black women. In October of this year, advocates and domestic violence survivors attended an emergency hearing before the Chicago City Council, where they blasted local officials, police agencies, and others for not doing enough to protect them. Alderwoman Stephanie Coleman from the 16th Ward is leading the city's efforts to address the issue and has organized a task force. Globally, women and girls everywhere continue to be affected by this extreme form of gender-based violence, and no region is excluded. With an estimated 21,700 victims of intimate partner or family member femicide in 2023. The United Nations also reported that the highest number of victims of intimate partner or family member femicide was recorded in Africa in 2023, with 21,700 victims, followed by Asia with 18,500, the Americas with 8,300, Europe with 2,300, and Oceania with 300 victims. Africa continues to record the highest number of victims in aggregate terms, although it is advisable to interpret the regional estimates with caution, as they are subject to significant uncertainty given persistent limitations in terms of data availability, UN Women said. Ghada Waly, executive director of UNODC, highlighted the urgent need for strong criminal justice systems that hold perpetrators accountable and ensure support for survivors. The new Femicide report highlights the urgent need for strong criminal justice systems that hold perpetrators accountable while ensuring adequate support for survivors, including access to safe and transparent reporting mechanisms, said Waly. At the same time, we must confront and dismantle the gender biases, power imbalances, and harmful norms that perpetuate violence against women. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, or UNODC, is a United Nations office established in 1997. It was created by merging the United Nations International Drug Control Program and the Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice Division in the United Nations office at Vienna. The office was renamed to UNODC in 2002. Its core mission includes combating drug trafficking and abuse through policy, law enforcement, and community-based initiatives, strengthening criminal justice systems worldwide to prevent and address crime, preventing public and private sector corruption, and addressing international terrorism. In 2023, Mayor Brandon Johnson announced an expansion of the Emergency Fund for Gender-Based Violence Survivors and distributed an additional $5 million from the American Rescue Plan Act as part of the mayor's Road to Recovery plan. The added money will enhance the fund's capacity and offer a one-time, unrestricted $1,000 payment to survivors of domestic and gender-based violence until 2026. Chicago, WGN. A person of interest is in custody in connection with the stabbings of a mother and two of her sons, which sparked an Amber Alert early Friday morning. According to the Lake County Sheriff's Department, the suspect, originally identified only as a 39-year-old man, was taken into custody Friday morning on Interstate 65 near Crown Point, Indiana. The arrest
multiple investigations happening in the same time in the Greater Grand Crossing neighborhood.
Yeah, first a woman stabbed to death inside of her home last night, and then an hour later on the exact same block, an 8-year-old boy was abducted. Our Darius Johnson is live at Chicago Police Headquarters. And Darius, that abduction sparked an Amber Alert.
Hey there, ladies. Good morning to you. That Amber Alert was canceled just before 4:30 this morning, and all police will tell us is that the boy is safe and unharmed. However, Chicago police have yet to connect these two crimes that took place. However, both of them happened on the same block an hour apart. Let's get you right to that video. This is at 71st and Eberhard in the Greater Grand Crossing neighborhood. Police say at 6:55 yesterday evening, a 33-year-old woman was stabbed multiple times inside her home. She was then taken to the University of Chicago Medical Center, where she died. Less than an hour later, an Amber Alert was issued from the same block. We are no longer showing the child's photo since he is no longer missing, but police tell us an 8-year-old boy was abducted by this man, 39-year-old Marcus Bosley. Police initially told us they were in a 2017 beige Ford Escape, but then police updated that to say they were in a silver 2022 Ford Escape with Illinois license plates and a missing passenger headlight. That Amber Alert again ended just before 4:30 this morning. Back out here live this morning, Chicago police have not said anything about where the two were located or if the little boy was located with Bosley. We have asked police if these two incidents are connected in any way. At this time, they tell us they do not have that information. We are still asking them questions as they are waiting to hear from detectives who are working this case. As soon as we know more, we'll be sure to update you and give you that information. For now, we're live at Chicago Police Headquarters. I'm Darius Johnson, CBS News, Chicago.
We know.
The arrest comes after Chicago police said a 33-year-old woman was killed and her two boys were critically wounded in a series of stabbings inside a residence in the 7100 block of South Eberhard at around 6:55 p.m. Thursday. Police said the woman, who has been identified as Teona Jones, sustained multiple stab wounds, including to the back and abdomen, and was taken to the hospital where she was pronounced unlived. In addition to the woman, two children who family members identified as Jones's sons, an 8-year-old boy and an 11-year-old boy, were hospitalized in critical condition following the stabbings. Officers said the 11-year-old boy was stabbed multiple times in the chest on the 200 block of West 66th Street around 8:10 p.m. Thursday. The 8-year-old boy, who was the subject of an Amber Alert overnight Friday, was located in the 8200 block of South Damon after being abducted and stabbed. According to authorities, deputies with the Lake County Sheriff's Department were alerted about a vehicle involved in the Amber Alert at around 9:30 a.m. Friday. According to authorities, deputies with the Lake County Sheriff's Department were alerted about a vehicle involved in the Amber Alert at around 9:30 a.m. Friday. The suspect's gray Ford Escape was located minutes later, and a pursuit began. The fleeing driver allegedly headed south on Interstate 65, and several police officers used an immobilization technique to box the suspect's vehicle in and slow it to a stop, deputies said. The suspect was ordered to exit the vehicle, but he allegedly refused while putting a knife to his neck. Shortly after, the man was placed into custody and taken to a local emergency room for evaluation and treatment of a wound to his abdomen, according to the sheriff's department. Authorities said the suspect, identified as 39-year-old Marcus Bowsley of Chicago, was released from the hospital on Sunday and booked into the Lake County Jail. He faces a felony charge of resisting law enforcement in Indiana and is awaiting extradition to Illinois, where he faces multiple charges, including attempted murder, aggravated battery, and kidnapping, according to the Lake County Sheriff's Department. The suspect vehicle was transported to the Lake County Sheriff's Department and is being held for a Chicago Police Department investigation.
Tonight, the man who faces charges in the brutal stabbing of his Southside mom and her 2 children is fighting extradition back to Chicago. This as community leaders gathered at a vigil to support the family. Our Andrew Ramos live in the newsroom with the very latest on this one. Andrew, good evening.
Good evening, Chris. Well, this Southside community is still trying to make sense of this tragedy that has rattled many across the city, hoping to shine a light on this family that has lost so much, where 2 young children remain in the hospital as their family prepares to lay their mother to rest.
These kids are going to be traumatized for the rest of their natural life. So we want to support this family. We want to support this community.
A stark reality for a family now on the mend. Just days after tragedy struck this community in Grand Crossing, leaders offered up prayers and condolences for the family of Teona Jones. The 33-year-old was stabbed to death Thursday night while her young sons, ages 11 and 8, were left critically injured. Both remain hospitalized at Comer Children's Hospital.
One of them is still intubated. The other one is awake and doing pretty good for now. But they still need our prayers.
The suspect arrested in connection to the case has since been identified as Jones's boyfriend, 39-year-old Marcus Bowsley. He was arrested in Northwest Indiana Friday morning following a chain of events, including a statewide Amber Alert and police chase. Bowsley is accused of kidnapping Jones's children after he brutally stabbed her. One of the children escaped the car somehow and found help with a neighbor, Cynthia Keel, who says she was left traumatized after finding the 11-year-old bleeding at her front door.
I asked God to allow my life to be a light. And if that light shines through my home and they can find that home as a safe haven, I've completed my mission.
The other boy was found hours later after showing up at a gas station on 79th and Damon. The community now determined to support this grieving family, as well as make sure victims of domestic violence get the resources they need before it's too late.
So our office will be making sure that women all throughout this ward, especially in the month of March, when we will celebrate sheroes all across and women's stories, the stories should not end like this.
Today's prayer vigil, just the first of many planned across the 6th Ward in the next couple of days. Organizers say it's an effort that aims to support and lift this family as they navigate this tragedy. Live in the newsroom, Andrew Ramos, CBS News, Chicago.
an investigation. Family members of the victims said they were heartbroken over the sudden and violent death of Jones, but are staying strong for her oldest sons. She was a great mom. Her children changed her life. She turned it around for them, Malik Wilson, the victim's brother, said. She was a great mom. Her children changed her life. She turned it around for them, Malik Wilson, the victim's brother, said. Wilson said he and his family were devastated by the deadly stabbing and described Jones as a beautiful soul and talented hairdresser. She loved her kids, she loved her family, and she deserves justice. She did not deserve this to happen to her, Kendra Wilson, the victim's cousin, said. Malik said his mom got word that Jones was in trouble, and when she made it to her around 6:30 p.m. Thursday night, Jones had been seriously injured. By the time she got to her, she was still alive, but she was alive in the ambulance too, Malik said. This is The Awakening, Black Women United. I am your host, Cheri Dani. Subscribe, like, share, comment, and hit the notification bell so you know every time I upload a new video.